If you are excited for the Khabib vs Gaethje fight, then be sure to show this by smashing the like button. Thank you for joining me, and welcome back to Keeney K TV. During this lead up to the Khabib vs Gaethje fight, there has been a very big emphasis on the leg kicks of Justin Gaethje. Immediately after that, however, there was a direct comparison made with the Edson Barboza fight. And I believe that Justin Gaethje's leg kicks are not that easily overlooked and concluded. You just can't look at somebody who was an outside fighter light on their feet and compare his leg kicks to Justin Gaethje's. Just because Khabib Nurmagomedov was able to overcome Edson Barboza's kicks does not immediately mean that he will do the same with Justin Gaethje. And the best reminder that we can use is the fact that when Justin Gaethje and Edson Barboza fought, Justin Gaethje outkicked Edson Barboza. In that matchup, Gaethje was the more effective striker. So knowing that Gaethje and Barboza present different styles, it is pretty ridiculous to me that one can say, look, he beat Barboza's kicks and he will do the same to Justin, while Justin's kicks were better than Barboza in their fight. So in this video, let us take a closer look at the effectiveness and influence Justin Gaethje's kicks can have come fight night. But before we begin, be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to my channel if you are new with the bell notifications turned on. And now with that being said, let's get right into it. In order to first understand where this false sense of security came from, we first have to take a look back at the Khabib vs Barboza fight. Now in that fight, it was pretty out of character to see how Khabib Nurmagomedov fought. Normally, when Khabib is fighting, he's a fighter who knows how to take his time, utilize his movement to see the openings and see how the patterns are from the opponent's side. But in the fight against Barboza, he wasted no time immediately coming forward and pressuring a fighter like Edson Barboza. So immediately from the get-go, there was already some sense of urgency established onto Barboza. Now aside from the mental warfare that had been applied by Khabib, we have to look at it in terms of technicality. Immediately, what happened technically is the fact that Edson Barboza was not given the distance and the rhythm and the space he needs to breathe and get his fight going. In the fight with Dan Hooker, he had plenty of room, plenty of space to move about, stay calm, stay focused, set up his kicks and get his work in. Against Khabib, however, he did not have the distance, he did not have the range, and he did not have the tempo, so he couldn't really focus in and get some effectiveness going. So he was forced to immediately retreat and fire off the back foot out of panic. Even though he was able to connect with leg kicks, these leg kicks are off of the back foot when he's going backwards, so they immediately don't have the forward momentum that is necessary to generate more power in your kicks. These kicks were more out of panic and and desperation in hopes for him to create some distance to where he can have enough room to do something proper. But he did not get that in the fight with Khabib. He was immediately chased down, pinned up against the fence and taken down, and from there, damage was established. And along with the damage, his cardio went down, his speed went down, his confidence and his demeanor seriously got dimmed. And when you're able to do that against a fighter like Edson Barboza, you've beaten him to the punch completely. Barboza is a predominant kicker. Put the pressure on him, close the distance, take away the kicking range, and he's pretty much fighting an uphill battle and the opponent is having major success. That is exactly what most of his opponents who were able to beat him had done. And one of those opponents happened to be Justin Gaethje. And looking at the differences between Khabib's performance and Gaethje's, we can immediately see that Khabib didn't want to participate in a stand-up battle against Barboza. Gaethje, on the other hand, he welcomed it, standing in the middle of the octagon and trading leg kicks. And immediately when that happened, you could see who the better offensive kicker was, and that was Justin Gaethje. Now, when you look at Justin Gaethje, one very important physical attribute is just how big he is. And what I really mean by that is if you take a look at his shoulders, his traps, his torso, his back, his legs, he has very dense bones. And when you take a look at a fighter like Edson Barboza, you can immediately see that Gaethje is like a brick wall and Barboza is more of a bamboo tree. So immediately you could see that even if Edson Barboza was to go in there and kick Justin Gaethje, it probably takes 3 of Edson Barboza's kicks to equal 1 of Justin Gaethje's. And so immediately there is a difference in power and effectiveness. And with that, Justin Gaethje had beaten Barboza in his own game, and from there he was able to establish offense to where he could get close, put some damage in, and lay out Edson Barboza in only just 1 round. Something Khabib Nurmagomedov was not able to do. Khabib went to the distance, whereas Justin Gaethje got it done in 1. And so looking at how both fighters were able to deal well against Edson Barboza, it makes you wonder how these two who were able to beat somebody like that will perform against one another. Because when Gaethje and Khabib will fight against one another, it is a completely different fight than what the fights they had with Barboza were. Because the way Justin Gaethje fights is very dangerous in close quarters and at the long range. With Barboza, he was very deadly at the long range, but inside the pocket, not so much. So let's take a look at Justin Gaethje. The biggest threat coming from Justin Gaethje's side is his ability to hold his ground, and that is the most important part of it all. You see, when Khabib Nurmagomedov was able to rush forward, Edson Barboza happily backed off. But if he were to do the same thing against Justin Gaethje, as I said earlier, he would be met with a brick wall. Justin Gaethje won't be the man who will backpedal immediately in hopes he can land a desperate inside leg kick. He's not that guy, because unlike Barboza, Gaethje has devastating hands also, so he can fight in both ranges. And so immediately the dynamic changes. And the argument that was made earlier, where they said Khabib can easily just rush in and take away the kicks, seems less likely than what it was earlier. Now, let's be frank about this. There is absolutely no way that Khabib Nurmagomedov fighting Justin Gaethje will not try to press Gaethje and take away the kicks. I am sure that he will try it, but the argument I'm trying to make is the fact that it will not be a replication of what the Barboza fight was, because in that performance, he had a lot of things to not worry about. Against Gaethje, he has to worry about a lot of things. The biggest problem I would have to see Khabib Nurmagomedov overcome is the offensive mentality and very destructive demeanor Justin Gaethje has in his fighting style. Because demeanor is something many people just do not talk about in the world of mixed martial arts. But instead of me explaining it, let's hear from Customato and Mike Tyson.
People say, well, his style is going to make him difficult. This style, no, it's not the style that matters. It's the morale behind the style that matters. It's the intention and the fierceness and the malice and the contempt to hurt.
So the point is that people make mistakes. I mean, fighters make mistakes while they're fighting, and they escape the consequences of the mistakes only because the opponent isn't skillful enough, relaxed enough, or whatever is involved to make him aware of the mistakes by hitting him or knocking him down or knocking him out. And since this doesn't happen, and the champions usually, after they develop a reputation, have a way of intimidating, or if not intimidating, inhibiting the effort of the opponent, where he doesn't take the chance and do the things that needs to be done and that he's capable of doing with other fighters, but not with him. So the result is that these fighters are supposed to be invincible, are invincible only because of the manner the opponents perform, not because they are excellent boxers, because they are vulnerable.
At the end of the Tony fight, they wrapped the interim belt around you, and I think a lot of fans around the world kind of like what you did straight after that.
So when Dustin Poirier got that interim title wrapped around his waist, he was done. He made it. And he still had the biggest mountain to climb, and that's Khabib. So, you know, I think he really, you know, he did not help himself at all there. You know, why would you feel that you've made it or you're the champion? I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna try to break his face. I promise you. I love hearing how impossible this is. How I have no chance. You know, this is not the first time I've heard this, and this is not the first time I've proved many people wrong. It's kill or be killed for me. It's not wrestling. Now this is war, and you know, I don't want to kill him, but I certainly want to cause massive damage to his body,
Right.
to his head, to his brain. You know, he doesn't think he can be hurt, and I'm going to show him that he is human.
So hearing that, and then knowing the fact that Justin Gaethje is critically acclaimed to be the most violent person in the most violent sport there is, it makes you really wonder what kind of a demeanor he will carry that other fighters did not carry going into a fight with Khabib. Now personally, I believe that there have been very few fighters that actually went into the octagon with Khabib in hopes to seriously hurt him and get him out of there. Aside from Conor McGregor, I can't really recall anybody that really went after Khabib and not give in to his aura, and that is very important. So why I said all of that is mainly coming down to the fact that when you're fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov, the last thing you want to do is back up, be afraid, be timid, and let him control the fight. Justin Gaethje so far has never really done that anyway. So going into a fight with Khabib, I am more confident in him than virtually anybody else that has fought him. Dustin Poirier was very timid, Michael Johnson timid, Ally Quinta timid. Everybody that really fought him kind of gave into that Khabib Nurmagomedov pressure, or they didn't even really try and fight it. They tried to deflect it and counter it. But how about you make Khabib reflect and deflect what you're doing? Not a lot of people have done that. Conor McGregor was obviously one of those fighters who immediately came after him, chased him down, and tried to really go after him. Unfortunately for Conor McGregor, he was a bit too reckless and too careless. He thought that Khabib was just gonna dust away and crumble. Obviously, this is a fight. You just can't hope that something like that happens. And seemingly between Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje, at least going into the fight, there is a big difference in perspective. With Conor McGregor, in hindsight right now, it felt like he just underlooked Khabib Nurmagomedov's skills and just overestimated himself and just expected things to work out because he's Mystic Mac. But with Justin Gaethje, he's a lot more real with himself. He said he woke up every single day in training camp telling himself that Khabib is going to go after him and beat him down, and that was his motivation to kick himself up and train really hard in order for that not to happen. And so when you take a look at the demeanor with Conor McGregor, he had supreme belief in oneself, and with Justin Gaethje, he also believes in himself, but he has also a very real amount of fear in him, and fear can be a very great motivator. Like Customado said, you have to be able to control your fear because it is fuel, it is motivation. If you can't control your emotions and your fear, then it will eat you up. But if you're able to control it and use it to your will, then you can have excellent outcomes. Just look at the performance Justin Gaethje had against Tony Ferguson. When he picked up the phone, he said that he was scared to fight somebody like Tony Ferguson. He literally said it himself. He was scared. But that didn't stop him from entering that octagon and trying to inflict damage, because he will try his absolute very best to avoid that. But now coming back to technique, I really had to go into demeanor to explain how things will work out. Knowing Khabib Nurmagomedov, traditionally, he has always been a fighter who will take his time and be smart. He has always talked about being smart inside that octagon, and having 28 fights and coming out of all of them without a single scratch on your face really just proves that point. So every single time, let's just say a round starts, you will see Khabib be patient and calm and be on the outside of the octagon. And oftentimes, you just don't see many people exploit that. Ally Quinta, in the opening of their fight, immediately went after Khabib and pressed Khabib back up against the fence. Conor McGregor did the same thing. But aside from that, you haven't really seen it much. And the problem with Conor McGregor and Ally Quinta is, well, for Ally Quinta's case, he was never a great offensive striker anyway. Conor McGregor throws one big shot at a time, and he's not good in terms of fighting side to side. He's very good at setting you up in a straight line and catching you, but when you're applying mobility and sidestepping and lateral movement, it becomes very hard for Conor to time you, since he's a a counter puncher predominantly, if you don't give him an opening, he won't have any success. But Gaethje is just totally different. He doesn't really rely on counter punches. He will create his openings, and that is where everything starts to matter. Justin Gaethje's demeanor, his physical attributes, his big bones, his strong frame, his wall-like figure will be coming forward and pressing Khabib back. And in that momentum of coming forward, Justin Gaethje is the best leg kicker I've seen who is able to hit the inside of the leg with such power as the outside of the leg. And why this is important is because it just comes out of nowhere. And while you're worrying about getting your legs kicked in, all of a sudden you get jabbed up and hit to the body and to the head, and his punches are powerful as well. So when Khabib is on the outside and moving and bouncing around, he will have a very active come forward fighter in Justin Gaethje. And so he becomes the fighter for the first time really that has to worry about the other fighter. And I believe Justin Gaethje is one of the few fighters who can capitalize on offense and who has the character to do so. Because Dustin Poirier, I believe he has great offensive skills and techniques, but I believe he just lacked the character to commit to such a game plan. And obviously Khabib has his own skills in his own right. I mean, he's so light on his feet, so quick, so fast, so unpredictable that he is a challenge in his own right. And especially after the fights he has had with Conor and Dustin and all the time that has passed, he has become probably even better than what he was. So Khabib is a legit threat to Justin Gaethje also. However, we just can't overlook that Gaethje is probably the man for the job to commit to such a game plan and a style. And that is why I believe that we just cannot overlook and just brush away the leg kicks of Justin Gaethje amongst other things. Because Khabib is light on his feet, and if Justin Gaethje is able to kick the legs and take away the mobility just like he has done against Tony Ferguson, he will have a stationary Khabib Nurmagomedov. And when he has Khabib stationary, he can utilize his round punches to cut off side-to-side movement, or just utilize straight punches and get damage done in that manner. Either way, Justin Gaethje is a very violent fighter, and come fight night, I believe you will see why he has the nickname that he does. Either way, come fight night, it will be a tremendous fight. But before then, I would like to know what you think of this fight. Who do you think will win? Leave it all in the comment section down below. And as always, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later. For all the talk of undefeated records, legacy, and greatness, for all the money made and tickets sold, the true measure of a fighter comes inside the ring. Since it has been said that inside this octagon, the truth will eventually find you. For Khabib Nurmagomedov and Justin Gaethje, the moment of truth is looming. With months of preparation until the opening bell sounds, and a fire stoked through months of training ignites with a hellish fury. And so, at UFC 254, in that moment, just before the bell sounds, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Justin Gaethje will have the truth find them. At first glance, they have nothing in common. A violent American brawler and an untouched Russian technician. But at its essence, fighting is a simple sport. Its routines and rhythms, steadfast and universal.